Welcome to another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I'm the founder of Teach the Geek. I work with technical professionals so they can present more effectively, especially in front of non-technical audiences. And you can learn more about that at teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Ever forget someone's name right after they say it? If so, you're not alone. And today we're talking with memory expert Bob Miller about why that happens and what to do about it. So if you're in a technical field and remembering names or small details isn't your strong suit, this episode's for you. We're sharing practical tips to help you connect better. Whether you're at a networking event, giving a presentation, or explaining something complex to someone outside your field. It's all about making memory work for you. So let's get into it. Welcome to Teach the Geek interviews, Bob.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So when it comes to remembering names, why is it so hard for so many people, you think?
Well, everybody says that they're bad at remembering names, and that's because names are nonsense words. They have no meaning in most cases. There is no definition for a Neil or for a Bob or for a whatever name you've got. So it's hard to memorize something that has no meaning.
Oh, okay, yeah. I guess I suppose that is a interesting way to think about it. So when it comes to technical people specifically, we're not exactly known for being social butterflies. So can so I'm curious to know how the memory tricks that you teach others, how can they can work for people like myself.
Yes, well, it can work for everyone, technical or not. And but the reason that it's even more important for people who are in the technical field is if they're not really socially oriented. Getting somebody's name down first is the first step towards any type of business or social relationship. So if you can call them by name, you've made the first step. So so yeah, anybody can do it, and it's just a mental process of active listening. If if you're ready, I can just tell you the three steps that they're pretty simple, but they need to be explained. And the three steps are look, listen, and link. You look at the person, you listen to their name, and then you mentally link those two together. That's the easy explanation.
Okay, look, listen, link, three L's. All right, nice.
Yeah.
Was that on purpose that you made them all start with L?
Yes, I was using a different acronym earlier, and then I just came up with that. And that's so much clearer for people. And it's easy to remember because it's a pretty simple, pretty simple words. And the process sounds simple, but it just takes some practice to do it.
Got it. All right, so let's just say a technical person's at a networking event and they're meeting a whole bunch of people.
Mhm.
What tip would you give them to try to remember all those names?
Well, I can give you some tips and I can give you some techniques, and the tips can be implemented immediately with no practice. And here's three quick tips. Before you go to an event, just make the decision that you're going to try to remember names. Of course, you're not going to the event in order to memorize, but you know you're going to be meeting people. So if you just decide ahead of time first, before you get there, say, I'm going to try to focus on people's names and pay attention. Because oftentimes, we don't pay attention to names. But so first, remind yourself you're going to do that. Secondly, whenever somebody tells you their name, no matter how simple it is, repeat it back to them. They say, "Oh, my name's Neil." You say, "Oh, you're Neil," and you just say it back because then what you're doing is creating a memory in your own mind of you saying their name. That will help a lot. And a third quick tip is do some review. Like if you're in the meeting and you're just standing around, you can look at all the people that you've met and just recite their name back to yourself in your mind. So those three will help a lot. Um, but the but the techniques are, they're more involved. The first step is when you look at somebody, you need to choose something to make them more memorable to you because a face has a lot of features. So sometimes you want to just focus in on something that's very unusual or specific about a person. Okay. You might look at them and say, okay, I'm going to remember that guy because he's got a bald head, or I'm going to remember this person because they got red hair, or this person has a piercing on her nose. So you choose something very specific that will stand out. And that's the first step. You're really looking at them. And if you just do that one step by itself, that'll make a difference. But the second step is really key. And that is that when somebody tells you their name, you need to convert it into something that is more memorable. Because as I said, a lot of words do not have any definition. There's no definition for a Michael or for a Lisa or for a Sally. And so you need to convert it into something else that's more memorable. So, for example, if someone says their name is Michael, you could imagine a microphone, but you have to really see it. Just think, oh, microphone. You really see it in your mind's eye. And that first syllable will key you to their name. If someone says their name is Sally, then really see and imagine a salad. Okay. And you have to really see it and decide what kind it is. If someone says their name is Lisa, you could imagine something like a dog leash. Now, you can use any word that reminds you of their name. It doesn't have to rhyme. Like when I met a man at the Mexican restaurant, his name was Elvis. So I just remembered a guitar. Okay. So now, that's the look step and the listen step. And what we've done is we've made the name more memorable by converting it into an image. And images are a lot easier to remember than names. And we've made the face more memorable by choosing one specific characteristic. So then you can just mentally link them together. And that's the third step. For example, if you looked at me, you might notice that I'm a little follically challenged. Aren't we all, right, Neil? And so, um, and so you could look at my bald head and use that as your memory cue. And then my name is Bob, so you could imagine a fishing bobber. And so step three, to link them together, you just imagine my bald head as a giant fishing bobber, red, white, like that. And if you really see it in your mind's eye, that will make a difference. It has to be funny and unusual. And believe me, I know it sounds ridiculous, but that's why it's memorable, because it is ridiculous, because ordinary is not memorable.
Huh. I'm trying to think what people could remember to remember my name.
Yeah, kneel is it's a verb, like mine is a verb too. But so you could imagine somebody just kneeling down. Like if I was looking at you, I want to remember your name is Neil. I could imagine you kneeling or on one knee, or I could just imagine a knee. That would be my first choice.
Okay, yeah, Neil. Yeah, you're right. It is a verb. I didn't even think of that. And I really like your tip on when someone tells you their name, you say it back. Your name's Neil. Although I will say if I said my name's Neil and then someone says your name's Neil, I'll be like, yeah, that's what I just told you.
Or you can say, you know what to do is the question, you can say, well, hello, Neil. It's great to meet you.
There you
Of course,
go.
I'm not talking about like overuse. You don't like say, "Hey Neil, how's it going today? Neil, are you okay, Neil?" I don't mean that. I mean just say it once so you can create a memory in your own mind.
Yeah, yeah, that's really I think that could work for me for sure. Okay, so let's just say there's an instance where you're meeting a potential team member. It's really important for you to remember what their name is. Maybe you forgot to say "nice to meet you, Neil," right after they said Neil. What can you do in that instance?
Well, I've had those situations where I just was not paying attention and the so-called memory expert wasn't even listening, or I didn't hear their name or something. And so I've just said to people, I said, you know what? I wasn't even focusing on your name. Could you tell me again? And then sometimes all it takes is forgetting a name once to really lock it into your memory, because that little embarrassment factor makes it more important to you. So and people understand that. If you're honest with people and say, oh, yeah, um, I forgot your name, or I didn't hear it correctly, I didn't hear it clearly. Could you tell me again? Just ask them.
Man,
They don't mind.
there's been so many instances where I'm a bit embarrassed after to ask them, especially. But I suppose if you do it sooner than later, that's better.
Yeah,
if you
right.
procrastinate, it's like you haven't known my name. I've been speaking to you for like months now.
Yeah, definitely say it as soon as possible.
Yeah,
Uh,
for sure.
There's an old Seinfeld episode of Jerry forgot the name of his date, and it's like way too late. He goes, "No, it's way too late for me to ask her name." So he tries to find it throughout the episode, but he doesn't. So she finally breaks up with him
Oh, for not knowing her name.
for not knowing her name. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Okay, so can you think of a time when remembering a small detail about somebody really paid off?
Oh, yes. I was at a networking event. I was at a Chamber of Commerce event, and there was a woman there who I just met for the first time. Her name was Pam, and she didn't really have an unusual face or any feature, but I noticed her hair was, pretty like straight cut all the way around. It was like kind of framed her head, and it looked a little bit unusual. It kind of looked old-fashioned. Now, usually, you want to be cautious when you use hairstyles because, people, women can change them, right? But, maybe they don't change them every day. So I just said, okay, I'm just going to use her hairstyle and use that as a memory cue. And then I saw her a week later at another networking event, and that hairstyle was right there, and it immediately cued me to her name. And I said, "Hey, Pam." And then I introduced myself to her again. I said, "I'm Bob." And she said, "Oh, thank you for telling me your name." So, in the one hand, I made her feel great because I remembered her name. But secondly, I didn't put her in the embarrassing situation of having to remember my name. So that paid off, and then we made a good connection right there. So, that's one example of how I cued in on somebody's special facial feature and remembered it.
Okay. But the good thing she wasn't wearing a wig, Bob.
Yeah, right. It is a little risky doing doing hairstyles, but
Yeah. But look, yeah. So luckily that was the case there, and for I can assure you, for me, that will never be the case. I'm just gonna use my regular hair from now on.
right, exactly.
I'm cool with my regular hair.
Right.
Okay. So let's just say that you're a technical person and you are prepping for a presentation, and you know there are going to be people in, and you know the people who are going to be in the room. How do you what memory techniques can you use to really remember their names so that your message lands better with them?
Well, are you saying that you probably already know the names of the people before you arrive?
Yeah.
Yes. So you definitely so you know their names, so that's great, right? Um, I just recently heard of a magician who when he was do his performances, sometimes he just remember just three or four people. And during his presentation, during his show, he'd refer to them in the show. He'd say, call them out by name. And even though you're not naming everybody in the audience, you're making a connection then. You're saying, hey, Tom is in the audience, and I know that he's really into this type of technology. And so that's what we're going to talk about now. So if you know who somebody is and you know a little bit about them and you can refer to that from stage, then you're making a connection because if you connect to one person in the audience, it's like connecting to the entire audience. And of course, you can use these memory techniques for more than just remembering names. I mean, I also teach how to remember lists and speeches and facts using a different memory technique.
Oh, okay. What would the technique be to remember a speech?
Yeah, this is a very old technique. It's called the loci system, LOCI. Now people might know it as the journey method or the memory palace. That's a more modern term. But this is what speakers have been using for 2000 years, and it means using a location to help you remember a sequence. For example, you could remember the rooms in your house. You make a path through the rooms in your house because you can remember anything as long as you associate it to something you already know. And what you already know is your house. I mean, you know that like the back of your hand. So I do this like I speak about how to remember names, and I've got a half an hour presentation, and I use the journey method to do that. And I've got down in I imagine in the basement like 9 different stops in the basement for the first part of my speech that I'm going to be saying. And then in the kitchen, and then my the back room and the bathroom and the office and the dining room, I've got a path and I've got a number of points in each room, and I just imagine an object that's going to remind me of the main point of what I want to talk about. So if I want to talk about somebody about name tags, I would imagine a name tag at a particular location. When I want to remember that I need to say something about review on a speech, then I imagine a rear view mirror on the shelf in this one particular room. And the funny thing is that if you imagine it's there, it will be there for you. It's a lot easier to remember an object, an imaginary object sitting on a shelf, than it is to remember, what is the next step in my speech.
Oh, that's so interesting. When it comes to these techniques, whether it's to remember names or to remember speeches, where did they come from, Bob?
Where do these techniques come from?
Yeah.
Well, the loci system is very old. There was a ancient orator named who would speak all the time, and he was well known for um, his name was Cicero, and he was well known for giving speeches. And he actually wrote a little booklet, I guess you'd call it a treatise, on how to use memory for speakers in your speeches. So, and that's 2,000 years old. So the system has been around for a long time, although it's been modernized and popularized. There are many people that speak about remembering names or remembering uh, anything, and it's called mnemonics. And any search online for mnemonics will find a wealth of information about how to do these techniques. The hard part is it takes practice, just like learning a musical instrument.
Where's your interest in these techniques even come from?
Oh, thank you for asking that. I was a professional magician for 20 years when I lived in Rochester, Minnesota. And I just fell into this accidentally. I would usually would do walk around magic during the social hour, before a corporate event. People would just be drinking and talking. So I do close-up tricks, and then after the social hour, after dinner, I would do my stage show. And normally when I'm doing my walk around magic, I would never ask people their names because it didn't matter. It didn't add to the set, and I was never going to be see these people again anyway because I was just there for the day, right? But I went to a magic show in Mankato, and it was very small. There was less than 20 people there. There might have only been 12 or 13 people. So I just on the spot decided, hey, since it's such a small group, I should try to be more personal and just ask people their names. And I wasn't intending to remember their names, but I accidentally did. So after dinner during the stage show, I said, well, I'd like to personally welcome each and every one of you. And then I named each person from stage. And I thought that was as far as it was going to go, but I got instant applause. The audience was just shocked by this. And I was shocked by the reaction because it was a very strong reaction, as if I'd done an amazing magic trick. But I think the audience applauded it because they knew that it wasn't a trick, that it really was memory. So, as a performer, I pay attention when people applaud me, right? So I decided I'm going to try to do this again. So I started practicing, and I did a lot of magic shows, so I had lots of opportunity to practice. And I just asked people their names, and I got better and better at it. Um, sometimes I sometimes I would say their names from stage, sometimes I wouldn't, but the point is I got better and better. And that actually, I'll tell you, that did two things for me. It helped me to learn how to do it, but it also gave me confidence that I can do it. And I know that, and I can remember, I mean, I can easily remember 40 people in the audience, but there is actually an old YouTube video of me recalling 80 names. Um, and when I say numbers like that, I know that a lot of people, watching this may say, that's impossible. I could never do that. And that's what I thought about myself too. So that's why the confidence is really necessary. People should just try it. Just try it and say, well, all right, I'm going to give it a shot. And they may discover how easy it really is. So that's how I got into the memory stuff. So I started doing more and more memory stuff. And then sometimes I would do memory demonstrations on stage. Like I would have a deck of jumbo playing cards and they would have magnets on the back. And I would just have an audience member just put 25 cards on the board randomly. And I just memorized them. And with my back to the board, I would just name the locations and the numbers of all the cards. So it became more and more a thing until finally I started teaching it. So now I do workshops on how to not just remember names, but also how to remember lists and how to give speeches.
Nice. Wow, yeah, 80 names, memorizing 80 names. That yeah, I'm sure for some people that's the trick in and of itself.
Yeah,
Wow,
it is hard to do, I'll admit that, but it's very impressive. And once you learn how to do it, it gets easier and easier.
got it. All right. So when it comes to people giving presentations, Bob, they're often nervous giving them, especially if you're a technical person that has to give a technical presentation in front of a non-technical audience. So how would you go about remembering, well, either the speech or the names of the people in the audience while you're dealing with your nerves?
Yeah, there's a couple of things you can do. First, you can have your speech pre-memorized using the journey method, like I talked about. And before I do a presentation, I just think of each step in my journey. And I say, all right, what's at step one? What's at step two? And I think through the steps in my house. And once I go through that, then I know, okay, I got the speech down first. So first, that gives me the confidence that I'll be able to remember everything that I need to say. But then the other thing that you can do is you can also use the journey method to remember some people that you might want to talk about during your message. Like you could say, I'm going to use these three rooms in my house, and I'm going to use them to remember three people. And you can preload their names, mentally preload their names into the room and say, my kitchen is going to be where I talk about Neil. And I might remember something about, oh, this is what Neil does. And I might create an image in my mind and add that to the picture of Neil just kneeling in my kitchen. Like, oh, Neil is a podcaster. So I might imagine Neil holding a microphone. Okay. And then in another room, if I know that, like, say, Tom is going to be in there and that he's a web programmer, then I might imagine some tom-tom drums in that room, and I might imagine a spider web on the tom-tom drums. And that would remind me, oh yeah, Tom is a web programmer. So that's a way to rehearse your speech and then preload some images for some things that you might want to say about people who will be in the presentation.
Wow, this has been an interesting conversation, Bob. I never even thought about the how you can use techniques or tips to memorize or remember, various things, whether it's the presentation or
Mhm.
remembering names. But for the people who are watching or listening to our conversation, if you were to offer one takeaway that they can, well, take away from our conversation in terms of remembering names or remembering their speeches, what would it be?
It's not, I would say that if you call it memorizing, then people say, oh, that's hard. And they think about trying to remember state capitals when they're in grade school and things like that. I just say if you have a great imagination, if you have any imagination, then you can remember. Because this isn't memorizing, this is imaginizing. If you just imagine something like right now, if you just said, I'm going to choose 5 rooms and you imagined an object in each of those rooms, you would remember it. You'd probably remember it tomorrow without even trying. So I would tell people just say, this is imaginizing. Just use your imagination and create some funny images, and you'll discover how easy it really is.
Yeah, okay. Okay, yeah. Remember imagining Neil Thompson kneeling down somewhere in a room in his house somewhere for sure. Okay, yeah.
With the microphone. Yeah.
Yeah, I get you. All right, this has been great. Thanks again for being a guest, Bob. How can people get in touch with you?
Well, the website is memorymagic.info, info, memorymagic.info. And so they can find anything that they want on there. I also have got my book, Remember the Room, is available on Amazon in in paperback and Kindle, and just today in audio format too.
All right, great. Well, everyone, that marks the end of another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I'm the founder of Teach the Geek. I work with technical professionals so they can present more effectively, especially in front of non-technical audiences. And you can learn more about that at teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Until next time, take care and stay safe. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.